Hey, how's it going, friends? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Welcome. It is January 20th, the year of our Lord, 2023. So, let's talk about the economy a little bit. Now, I'm no expert by any means on economic matters or financial, but again, I do like to keep an eye on everything going on. And it's no mystery that we are going through some economic troubles. Of course, inflation around the world is affecting millions of people, not only in the United States, but pretty much every major economy. And so, again, the truth is stranger than fiction, as I always like to say. And everything going on right now in the world, the war in Russia, all these UFO sightings, the economy, all these strange things that seem to be taking place in our day and age are of no coincidence. The Bible spoke of all these things, and all the answers can be found in the Bible because, again, if you are a believer, that is the wisdom of God. And again, the Bible is a book of prophecies. So I do believe that an economic collapse has to take place in order to give way to a new world order, a one world economy. And I think there has to be a precursor to that. Now, a lot of conspiracy theorists out there have been talking about this, right? As they see all these world elites, meeting in Davos, and as they take a look at everything going on in the crypto space and the inflation crisis that we are going through, there's a lot of speculation and rumors that, this is all being planned by like the Illuminati and the elite. But in reality, I think that really these people just don't know what they are actually doing. This has to take place. These people are pretty much running these economies into the ground. They have been for a couple of years. And so, it's time to pay the piper, as they say. And it's going to get really bad. This is going to be a historical collapse. And it's going to seem like America or American society and all those that depend on the dollar are going to collapse. But as I've spoken, there is a great deception that is going to take place. And as strange as it sounds, I believe that we will have a union again of state and church. I think that the Catholic Church will unite with the United States and actually pay its debts. I think people are unaware of just how much or how wealthy the Vatican is. But again, the Bible prophesied that Rome would be the last kingdom before the return of Christ. And if we go to the Bible, we actually find in the Bible that before the end there will be a one world economy. And we can find that in the book of Revelations in chapter 13, verse 17. So let's take a look here. Again, the whole chapter here is talking about this beast. This is where you can find the Catholic Church taking control of the world by or via a union with the United States. Now, I know what I'm saying might sound absolutely crazy to you, but it's really not. Go take a look at my video, The Great Religious Deception That Is Coming to the World. Just take a look at the United States. When the nation was founded, Catholics weren't allowed to hold office because the founding fathers saw everything the Catholic Church and, false religion did in Europe, right? And so, they gave the freedom of religion here. However, a lot of them were Puritans or Protestants, and so they made sure to make that separation. But again, you see it in the dollar, right? In God we trust. You see all these politicians swearing on the Bible, and yeah, now in the Supreme Court, did you know we have a Catholic majority? Of course, we've seen that a lot of their decisions, such as on abortion, have been very controversial as of lately, and President Biden himself is a Catholic. So the church definitely has a lot of power and influence, and I think that right before the United States completely goes into shambles because of this economic collapse, the Catholic Church is going to take over, and then they're going to, use Russia and communism, China, as a rallying point. And pretty much every other nation that is an ally to the United States will be part of this new economic order that will take place, and all of these so-called Christians will see this as a miracle of God, and those people in that system, they definitely will get rich, but for those that are fooled into that system, they will essentially be taking the mark of the beast and damning themselves. Again, friends, the truth is stranger than fiction. So let's take a quick read here. Now, let's see what the church actually does here. It says, he causes all. Now, the system is going to be headed by the Antichrist, like the literal manifestation of Satan in a man, who personally, now I can't assure this 100%, but personally, I believe it'll be the head of the Catholic Church. So whatever pope is in charge at that time. Of course, there's rumors of Francis, of his resignation now that the previous pope passed away. So it says here, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or foreheads. There's a lot of speculation about the mark of the beast, right? And that, now here's the important part, the economic part, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. So, but what I wanted to focus on here is that there is obviously going to be, this is going to be economic, right? It's going to involve the money. And again, Rome has the money, and that no man may be able to buy or sell except those who have the mark. So you'll have to accept and go along with this system, right? With this union between state and church once again. And I don't think it'll be that difficult to convince the populace. We see that the Catholic Church has started to become a lot more liberal to bring in the heathen and the unbelievers. Again, they have their agent's position in, offices of power such as the Supreme Court and the presidency, right? They don't need to physically control the whole populace. They just need to control the positions of power, and the Catholic Church has infiltrated for many years, and they are doing just that. And again, go take a look at my video, The Great Religious Deception That is Coming Upon the World. So, with that out of the way, we know that according to the Bible, there will be a new world order, an economic order, and people will become wealthy and prosperous through this satanic order, which again, a lot of the theorists out there, or those that speculate about things, try to make it out like it's the Illuminati and stuff, but really it's all just diabolical, springing forth from Satan himself. And so again, there are many signs right now speaking of these things, and everything in the world going on, such as the war in Russia, it's affecting the global economy. And so it's really going to culminate in a historic collapse. But again, there will be a solution, which is going to be diabolical in nature, but it'll seem like a miracle to the populace. Now, there are plenty of articles talking about or giving us signs that the economy is collapsing. Not only is inflation a sign that me and you can see, but as you can see here, major technological companies like Microsoft have literally began to lay off thousands of employees, something we really haven't seen since the 2008 financial crisis. You can see here Microsoft is laying off 10,000 employees. This is literally just recent news here from CNN, January 18th, 2023. We know that Amazon announced they were going to lay off 18,000 employees. That's 18,000 people with families, guys. It's terrible. And we know that Facebook last year already started making cuts. They made cuts of 1,000 jobs, and I'm sure they will continue to do so. So also we know that the U.S. government right now, they're gonna, they're gonna debate it and fight it out or whatever, and see if they're gonna raise the debt ceiling, because the Federal Reserve has warned Congress that they need to do something because they need to pay their debts and they don't have money. So essentially, Janet Yellen or whatever her name is saying, hey, we need to borrow more money so we can pay our debts, and then just continue to do that forever and ever. Which again, you don't have to be an expert to realize that that doesn't make sense. So we can see here by this article here from The Guardian, U.S. heads for debt ceiling standoff as House Republicans refuse to budge. The U.S. economy could be headed for a crisis manufactured by a handful of House Republicans. The Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, informed congressional leaders on Thursday that the U.S. has hit its debt ceiling, which limits the amount of money that the government can borrow. Now look at this right here. That the government can borrow to pay all of its bills. So just imagine, let's say you owe some bank $20,000, right? Let's say you got to pay it on the 30th of January, right? Let's say you have no job, you wasted all the money that you borrowed, and the day comes when you have to pay the bank, what you borrowed plus interest. So what is the United States doing? Well, they borrow more money, let's say hypothetically from another bank, in this case from the very institution that's letting them borrow money, the Federal Reserve. They borrow more money so that then they can make their payment on that debt with interest, and then now they're more in debt with more interest, and that's just the cycle that's been going on for years. To the point where now the United States is like 30 trillion in debt, a ridiculous number. You can't even comprehend that number. Just remember that $1 billion is 1,000 million. So 1 trillion is 1,000 billion, and the U.S. is in debt 30 trillion, and every time they have to pay their bills, essentially they borrow more money. So it's like a giant Ponzi scheme, and you're actually going to hear it from an expert himself, Peter Schiff here. He has an excellent take. This man predicted the 2008 financial crisis. And so the only thing that's keeping the United States afloat, as opposed to, let's say, like Venezuela and these other countries that are experiencing the consequences of doing this, is that so many countries across the world in Europe are tied to the dollar, right? So, that sort of keeps the dollar moving and the United States monetary system flowing. But again, once it does go down, it's going to affect the whole world. But this is prophetic in nature, guys. It's not some nefarious elite Illuminati group. It was prophesied. It's just due to the irresponsibility of world leaders and corruption. And again, because God's word has to come to pass. This new world order has to come to pass. The Antichrist has to manifest itself, and the end of the world will come after that. So, anyways, let's go ahead and finalize this video by taking a look here at what Peter Schiff said, and we'll actually hear it from him on one of the videos here on the page. So it says, the U.S. reached its debt ceiling of $31.4 trillion today, January 19th. Treasury Secretary Janet L. Yellen said in a letter to Congress, which is responsible for lifting or suspending the borrowing cap with a simple majority in both the House and the Senate. Now, they're going to raise it. They have there's nothing else they can do but just keep on spending money and borrowing until it pretty much blows up in everybody's faces, which I think is going to be pretty soon. Elected officials must decide whether the U.S. can borrow more money to pay its bills or fail to meet its financial obligations and possibly default on its debt. They're not going to default, there's too much interest. The U.S. borrows huge sums of money by selling treasury bonds to investors around the world and uses those funds to meet financial obligations such as paying military salaries. Now, even the experts have no clue what the heck they're talking about. Just look at the 2008 financial crisis. There's still theories and speculation as to what led to that. So don't be fooled by anybody here trying to explain to you that there's not going to be an economic collapse and all of this stuff. Again, I'm relying on the scripture, on the Bible. I believe we're living in the end times, and these things have to take place. And I think that it's getting ready to happen. So it continues here. Let's see. Once the U.S. hits the cap, the Treasury resorts to extraordinary measures, suspending some investments and exchanging different types of debt to try to stay beneath the cap. Eventually, the U.S. must either borrow more money to pay its bills, right, wrap your head around that, or abandon its financial obligations. By raising the debt ceiling, the U.S. government will essentially admit it is running a Ponzi scheme. According to economist Peter Schiff, a known opponent of debt-fueled growth policies, who predicted the 2008 financial crisis, so this guy's very smart when it comes to the economy. Quote, he says, the U.S. Treasury Secretary has admitted the only way to avoid a default on the national debt is to raise the debt ceiling so their government can borrow from new lenders to repay existing lenders. Schiff tweeted on January 16th, this amounts to an official admission that the U.S. is running the world's largest Ponzi scheme. It's the fall of the American empire, but again, it's not going to completely fall just yet, guys. The United States has its role to play in the end times, just like Russia does. And the United States, it's going to be the nation that is going to essentially give birth to this new world order. So, again, the truth is stranger than fiction. A Ponzi scheme is an investment fraud that pays older investors with funds collected from new investors. It's named after Charles Ponzi, who promised investors in the 1920s a 50% return within a few months for what he claimed was an investment in international mail coupons. Very interesting story. Go Google it. It's pretty incredible. Ponzi schemes promise high returns with little or no risk. They need a constant flow of new money to survive. When new investors dry up or existing investors cash out in mass, Ponzi schemes tend to collapse. A gold bug and Bitcoin skeptic, Schiff is known for his bearish views on the dollar and dollar-denominated assets. Now, he's a Bitcoin skeptic, rightly so. We've seen all of the nonsense and Ponzi schemes that have been taking place in the crypto space. But yeah, anyways, let's keep reading here. He is one of the few widely known investment professionals who spoke publicly about the 2008 financial crisis before it began. An opponent of debt-fueled growth policies, he is known for advocating for emerging market and commodity-focused investments. So let's go ahead and take a listen at this very interesting 4-minute analysis here. Now listen to what he says, guys, because I believe it's getting ready to happen.
Right now, the government is already spending about $500 billion a year on interest payments. That's up from about $300 billion. In fact, I was watching a conversation on CNBC, and they were actually talking about this, and they said that at the rate things are moving, it's possible that in 10 years, we might be paying $1 trillion a year in interest on the national debt. 10 years, we could be paying $1 trillion in interest in 1 year. How are these guys getting 10 years? We've got a $31 trillion national debt. 4% of that is $1.25 trillion. And, the average maturity, I think, is under 5 years. A third of the debt matures in the next year, but the debt is going up. 5 years from now, the national debt will be over 40 trillion. And we're going to have to pay an interest rate probably more than 5% on that. So $1 trillion tab for interest on the national debt isn't a decade away. It's a year, maybe two away. That's how close this crisis is. Where is the government going to get that money? It's probably going to be something like 30% of tax revenue or 40% of tax revenue would be going just for interest on the national debt, not paying down any of the debt, just paying the interest on the debt, and the debt keeps growing. This is a massive fiscal time bomb. In fact, earlier today, I retweeted a tweet that I made back on September 28th of 2021, and I was referring to a comment that Janet Yellen made in response to a question at one of these hearings about the national debt and if we should be worried about the size of the debt. And her answer was no. She said we shouldn't be worrying about the size of the national debt. She said instead, we should be focusing on how low interest rates are and how low the current debt service is on that debt. So it didn't matter that we had a lot of debt because it was cheap to finance it. Now, at that time, I pointed out, hey, wait a minute. What happens when interest rates go up? I compared that to people who were buying houses with adjustable rate mortgages. What happens when the rate goes up and you can't afford it? Because the Treasury wasn't taking advantage of low 30-year borrowing costs. The Fed was borrowing for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years. So they were rolling the dice and gambling that interest rates stayed low. Well, they're not low. They're much higher. I wonder if Janet Yellen is worrying about the national debt now that interest rates have moved up so much. Or is she going to start worrying because we already know that they're going to move much higher? For years, that was the justification that the government gave for borrowing money. They kept saying, hey, interest rates are really low. We should take advantage of it. We should just keep borrowing money while rates are low. Well, maybe you could have made that argument if you were locking in those low rates for 30 years, not if you were having to roll them over 30 days, 90 days, 1 year. And in fact, I often said, wait a minute, just because something is cheap doesn't mean you should do it. I would say, hey, if heroin was free, if they were giving out free heroin, would you say, hey, heroin is free, I might as well use it, it's free. If something is bad, just because the cost goes down, that doesn't mean you do it. And taking on all this debt was bad. Just because it was temporarily cheap, it wasn't a reason to do it. Well, we did it, and now we have to deal with the consequences. Powell said it himself. The longer you wait to deal with a problem, the worse the consequences. Well, we've waited a long time. In fact, the Federal Reserve deliberately created inflation since 2008 to postpone the pain. Why did we do quantitative easing? Why did interest rates go way down? Because the Fed did not want to allow a bad recession or allow a bad recession to get worse. The Fed wanted to prop up stock prices. The Fed wanted to prop up real estate prices. So in order to do that, we created inflation. We put interest rates at zero. We did quantitative easing. Well, now we've got a huge inflation problem. And now the Fed has to fight a monster that it created. But the Fed can't fight and create inflation at the same time.
There you have it, guys. Go check Peter Schiff out. He always has an excellent analysis. But again, beyond these expert guys, the Bible tells us that these things will take place. There will be an economic collapse that's going to pave the way for the New World Order, which, again, a lot of people who aren't religious are speculating about. They can see the writing on the wall, and it's coming, but you got to be careful because there will come a relief. There will be an answer, and as I stated in my video, the religious deception coming to the world, it's going to come from a very unlikely place, from a very unsuspecting place, which I believe is going to be Rome, the Vatican, the Catholic Church. Again, the truth is stranger than fiction. Anyways, leave me your comments down below, your thoughts and opinions. Make sure you give the video a like and make sure you subscribe for future coverage. Have a wonderful day and God bless.